If we all believe that relationships are hard work, then this is what we are going to get. Words, the beliefs, the way we think is a very powerful approach to our reality. Several years ago, I said no to this paradigm and I started to invest really deeply in my relationship skills, understanding the underlying patterns, mechanics, blueprints, things at play. And oh my gosh, I realized that most of us invest more into our career than into our social skills. At that point, I had very clear we need something new. So 5 years ago, I founded Modern Couples, the antidote to couples therapy, because I believe that there is a group of people who wants to proactively learn these things much rather than wait until the shit hits the fan. There's a group of people out there, and you are probably one of them, and that's why you're here, who has no time for bad relationships. In this podcast, we talk about inspirational stories, role models, how to navigate the good, the bad, the ugly, and raise the bar, showing up for each other and for love. I speak with experts from different fields that potentially have never thought about how their expertise applies to relationships, but it does. And I share my own entrepreneurial journey. We talk about love, purpose, and growth. I invite you to listen up, not just with your ears, but with your heart. And share your aha moments, because that's what's going to rewire your brain to 10x your love.
Hi, Marcella. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Hey. So let me try to introduce you to the audience. You are a serial entrepreneur, and in that you have been in many businesses involved. One of the most known is probably that you are the founder of Thrive Themes,
That's right,
a business that you sold successfully, and many other online products that you brought to the market, courses, as well as an online channel that you run right now. In general, you like to experiment and you like to master skills. You are in researching your story, I found out that, you actually brand on your website, one of the persons most likely to succeed. You quit university and said, no, I want to do something I'm passionate about, right? So you really like to do what inspires you and experiment. And today you support and mentor entrepreneurs to get highly successful in a way where they also connect with their soul and can balance a life, a business life and private life, right? So today we are talking about a new project in your life. And how about you introduce that topic? Because I love how you dove into a topic that might be considered a taboo subject, but it is so relevant for relationships.
Yeah, so this is my most recent project. Basically is called Quit by Healing, and it is all about porn addiction. So I've been interested in personal development for a long time, and I was exploring this in different ways, and I was doing some men's work. So I was visiting, like basically men's retreats, men's groups, and then also ran my own men's group. And I noticed a recurring theme of sometimes very, very serious struggles with addictions to pornography. And it was also related to something I'd been thinking about and also kind of wrestling with in my own life. It kind of is a part of the digital addiction category. We now live in a world that's a new thing, is that we all have like this addiction machine in our pockets, where all of these, basically all of the most successful apps that you use on your phone are successful because they're addictive. Is that they've managed to get their hooks into our collective brains, and it can be pretty serious. And I think pornography is maybe the most severe form of that. So, just like, basically everybody's addicted to social media these days, and it leads to very, very considerable suffering. So I don't want to minimize that. It's a really serious source of suffering. But just in the way that social media tends to hook into some primal desire that we have for connecting with other people, for knowing what's going on in the tribe, for status and things like that. And it kind of hijacks that part of our brain and gets us to endlessly scroll to our own detriment. Pornography does this as well, and it affects especially men, because men tend to have a very strong drive, essentially a very strong mate-seeking drive. And pornography kind of hooks into that part of you, goes, look here, it gives you an illusion of mating success, essentially. And it can be very, very severe. And I think it's a very interesting topic to talk about because there's such a taboo about it. Like, you can casually joke about how everyone's addicted to social media at any dinner conversation, no problem. People will readily admit to some degree that they're overdoing this and maybe open up about some of the consequences. But very few people are comfortable talking about the fact that they're watching porn for an hour a day or maybe more. Mm-hmm. And not only is the activity itself a huge taboo, but also the consequences of it can be really devastating. And it's also the kinds of things that is hard to talk about. So, and again, my primary audience is men because they're more affected by it more strongly. Unfortunately for women, it's uptrending as well. But it's also for men where, one of the consequences of it is essentially erectile dysfunction, is problems with having real sex. Essentially, the more porn you consume, the less likely you are to have a good sex life. And that's also something like men are not going to be open about that and be like, oh yeah, it's somehow I can't get a boner anymore suddenly, right? What's going on? Mm-hmm. Like, it's all like such a taboo topic. And it's also a really major obstacle to people, like people who are ambitious, who are trying to live a good life, trying to make something of themselves, maybe have entrepreneurial ambitions or whatever. This is a major blocker, right? That what you're doing to your brain and what you're doing to yourself and your stress levels and so on with this addiction is like, this is the major obstacle. And you can, so I started working with this because I saw it as like a major obstacle of the people that I was working with in other contexts. Yeah. And also because I have personal experience with this, like most people, like most people my age, I should say, I discovered porn when I was relatively young. I was probably like 12 or 13, which unfortunately for younger people, that age is usually lower, the time they first find it, right? And it got its hooks in me, and I was addicted to it for quite a long time. And I had to figure out what to do about it. I had to learn how to deal with this because it became a serious problem in my life. And so, yeah, I basically started talking about this because it's at this intersection of my interest of like helping people in their personal growth and also my personal interests and my personal experience.
Yeah. Can you, like, when you did that research, can you give us a little bit in numbers from your field, like how many men in your men's circle are affected by it or even outside? And when do we speak about an addiction? You mentioned an hour a day or, like those are subjective things, but.
Yeah. So there is a lot of data on this, but it's all controversial, let's say, because one big problem is that it's very hard to get honest numbers on this. Right? Even in an anonymous survey, generally people are not going to be fully open about what's going on when it comes to things that they're ashamed of, that they're struggling with, and so on. So it's quite difficult to nail this down. I think, so let's start with what is an addiction. So an addiction, the way I see it, the simplest way to think of it is an addiction as soon as you start doing it compulsively. So if you're using porn, if every time you use porn, it's because you feel maybe sexual arousal and you want to self-pleasure. So it's like your deliberate intention is, I want to experience sexual pleasure right now, and the way I want to experience sexual pleasure is with pornography. If that's the case every time you do it, then even if you do it quite often, it's not really a problem. Like, you're doing it on purpose. You're doing it because you want to do it, right? If you're doing it compulsively, if you're doing it not because you wanted to, but because you were really stressed or because you can't fall asleep if you don't, make yourself orgasm first, or because you just do it every day at this time, or you do it every time when you're at home alone, right? This kind of thing where, and this is the behavior that basically most people who, and especially again, most men who use pornography, this is actually what's going on. there's going to be things that trigger you into porn use that have nothing to do with your state of arousal and that have nothing to do with self-pleasure. And it's usually things like stress and things like that. And that's compulsive behavior. You're essentially doing it not because you want to, but because you're compelled to, right? Mm-hmm. That's immediately a sign of addiction. Now, how much is too much? I think it's obviously you can say, look, if you're doing it an hour a day, that's probably too much in terms of like your brain health, right? But the thing is, if you're doing it 2 minutes a day, that can also be a problem because we have people suffering from porn addiction where they're essentially overstimulating and doing it for long periods of time, and that can lead to problems. It can also lead to problems if you're always doing it like super quickly and you're afraid of getting caught. So your total time of using porn might be relatively low, but you're still doing it compulsively. You're still doing it as like a stress management thing and not a self-pleasure thing. So yeah, it's very subjective. Self-reported, it's a relatively small number of people who self-report as porn addicts. But if you look at how many people are using porn, how porn use is going up as well, like how much porn is being consumed, and some studies try to estimate this, and they usually land somewhere between like 75 to 90% of men in the reproductive age range are users to the extent that you could easily call an addiction. So, but like I said, it's quite difficult because you can't just say, okay, if you use it more than 3 times a week, you're addicted or something like that. It's not as simple as that. Mm-hmm. Subjectively, like if you're listening to this and you're going, I use porn, but I don't think I'm addicted. Here's the very simple way to find out. You just don't use porn for 30 days, right? And if that's difficult, then you were addicted. Because think about it, like that's the difference between being addicted to something and liking something, right? Like let's say you like pizza. Even if you like it a lot, you can easily go 30 days without pizza, right? It's like, I personally love pizza, but I often go 30 days without, I don't even think about it, right? It's just like, when's the last time I had pizza? It might be more than a month ago. I don't know. I don't keep track, right? And so if you tell me, hey, stop eating pizza for 30 days, it's like, sure, whatever. But if you told me stop eating pizza for 30 days and then I'm on day 3, I'm breaking out in sweats, something's going on, right? And unfortunately, this is what happens to most guys when they try to stop watching porn, is that you'll really struggle to make it to day 30, right? And you'll feel withdrawals and you'll feel frustrated and you'll have an inner dialogue about why am I even doing this? This is pointless, and so on, right? And all of that's your addiction.
Yeah. And you mentioned the brain damage it leads to. So I still would like to explore a little bit more of like porn addiction and its effects before we come to the part of like, how does it affect the relationship? But like, what is like, because many men also are more receptive to the logical root, like understanding a problem and what it leads to, right? So let's explore a little bit of the negative consequences of a porn addiction. What happens to the brain and.
Yeah. So I think that the easiest, there's 2 things to understand why this is a problematic addiction. And the easiest way to understand it is the first is that it has to do with dopamine. And this is where it's very similar to many other forms of addiction, including like social media addiction, gambling addiction, and even the addiction to a lot of substances is dopamine based. So essentially, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is your reward seeking and motivation neurotransmitter, right? And it's important. It has the function of essentially making you get up and go do stuff, including like you're hungry, you go get food, right? And then the experience of eating food is rewarding. That's dopamine. Now, the problem with this kind of instant gratification dopamine that we get from things like pornography is that it is it's like a spike in dopamine in your brain, right? It's too much too quickly. And that's why we like it so much, right? So think about like the original function of dopamine is like, I'm hungry, I have to go do something to get food, which might mean like I have to leave my cave and go forage or go hunt or something. It's meant to motivate me to do this thing that's I have to do this work to get the reward. And now we have this option of, I can just get the reward right away, 0 effort, right? And this is how every addictive app wins. It gives you however small a reward with the least amount of friction possible. So this is why we like it so much. It's almost like we found the cheat code. I can get the thing without having to do the work, right? The problem is it gives us too much stimulation too quickly. And if we do too much of that, it leads to downregulation. So every biological system strives for homeostasis. So if you constantly spike dopamine, what happens is your dopamine receptors downregulate. You become less sensitive to the same stimulation. And this starts the addiction cycle because you need to seek a stronger and stronger stimulation to get the same amount of pleasure or the same amount of reward out of it. This is a hallmark sign of addiction. So for most of us, it starts out with, you see a picture of a naked woman, and that's exciting enough. That's it, right? And but then over time you escalate. The way you use pornography and what you seek out escalates over time. And this is a clear sign of addiction. So you go from just pictures of naked people to watching videos of people having sex, to watching videos of people having like more extreme forms of sex, more taboo stuff, to maybe more people, right? You start out watching a couple having sex. Now you're watching threesomes, foursomes, orgies. You're starting to watch more and more. You start seeking out these different like fetishes and niche interests because you're seeking out something. Basically, you're watching the video of the couple having sex and it's somehow not doing it for you anymore, right? And so you're like, well, what can I add to this? Okay, well, maybe if they use these toys, maybe if there's a little violence, maybe if there's something, right? And it can go really far where people can end up watching stuff that is morally questionable, borderline illegal, or full on illegal. And why is that? It's because you keep overstimulating yourself and this downregulation means you have to seek a stronger and stronger and stronger stimulus in order to get the same kind of kick, right? So that's another sign of like, if you've gone from basically watching people have sex to stuff that you really wouldn't want anyone to know about what you're watching, that's a clear sign of addiction. That is your brain essentially constantly downregulating in response to the overstimulation, right?
Yeah.
And as a result of that, so this is a negative effect because as a result of that, it means that you can't enjoy, it makes everything else less enjoyable, right? Yeah. And this is why addiction has this effect of essentially narrowing your focus and narrowing your interest down to just getting the next hit.
Short interruption because this message really needs to go out there. The quality of your relationships impacts the quality of your life. It is, in fact, the key factor. And here we are, fearing and shying away from commitment, shying away from the emotional work, when really this is what distinguishes us from the machines, embracing emotions and learning how to embrace differences. So modern couples, what started out as the small coaching business has turned into a university, or I like to call it a universe. It is the place where ambitious leaders can upgrade their relationship skills up front. It is the place where couples turn to when they wonder, should I stay, should I go? Where we explore, if necessary, the graceful path of uncoupling. And it is also the place where we newly introduce bespoke matchmaking for ambitious individuals. If you are interested in any of that, because really every phase of life is an opportunity to grow your relationship skills, check out modern-couples.com. Once a month, there is a free masterclass where you can meet me, where we can connect, as well as if you like more the one-on-one approach, there is a limited amount of free discovery calls. See that you can get hold of one of them, and I hope we get to connect. I look forward to elevating your relationship.
Yes. And this is something you can really, I can observe this in myself, even on smaller things where, one of the things I easily get addicted to sugar. When I start eating sugary foods, I get more and more what interests me in food narrows down more and more towards just how do I get the next sugar hit, right? When I'm not in that mode, I like all kinds of food, right? But the more addicted to sugar I become, the more I'm just like, how do I get a hit? How do I get a hit? How do I get a hit, right? And And again, this is like the constant seeking of you're trying to get that stimulation that you're becoming increasingly insensitive to. And it means that nothing else, eventually, it's basically, that's one of the reasons why one of the consequences of it is mental health problems. Because it's like you can't enjoy things anymore. You can't even see the point in things anymore. Everything else becomes less enjoyable because you've put yourself into this dopamine depleted state. So the equivalent of that would be, again, like you eat so much sugar that the only thing, that like eating a carrot tastes like cardboard by comparison. Whereas if you don't eat sugar for a while, eating a carrot feels sweet and very delicious, right? So this is one of the ways. It's essentially this dopamine effect. That's one of the negative health consequences.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, yeah, go ahead.
If I may, like the way you describe it, also the journey from how do I start, just looking at that picture to going all into questionable areas, and then the comparison to food that you did, it brought up for me the picture of, because it is treated as such a taboo, I don't make it something I can talk about from early days on and actually see how others deal with that, right? Let's say as humans, we are here in a relationship summit. We all walk each other home. We all mirror each other things. And what happens is it's so important for us to have an idea, bounce it back with other people, share it, to even see role models and learn from them, adapt our own behavior to it. So when we take the subject of eating food, right, the importance of sitting at a family table together or eating in groups and adjusting our own eating habits as we sit with other people is completely a different journey as if I were to eat every day just alone, in a way of like, I just need to get those calories in there, or in terms of I heal certain traumas through food, or I just don't even consciously eat, just watch movies next to that. So I could look at my eating journey and see the importance of how important it is to compare, to spare, to exchange, to interact with other people, build a relationship around that. But that's all not there for my journey of relating, consciously relating with porn in that way, right? Even the way we relate with when it comes to our own journey in sexuality, if we cannot talk about it, if we don't have a setting where we feel safe enough to share, this is what's happening. What could it mean? Where could it come from? How do other people deal with that similar thing? Like, if we don't talk about it, if we don't feel safe sharing it, then we are constantly in our own inner world and loop. And it can take us deep down into a rabbit hole without really understanding the root cause of it, or exploring what is actually healthy and finding alternatives to it. So yes.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think in general with addictions, it's often that's the problem if the thing is not happening in the context of relating to others. So it's like with alcohol, right? It's like if you go out and have a drink with your friends every once in a while, that's usually no problem. The moment you like crack open the drinks at home alone, that's when it becomes potentially problematic.
Yeah. When it becomes like shame, like something you are shameful of, you don't dare talking about. And
like you said, porn has this problem of that's built in, like nobody's doing this in relation with others, basically, or almost nobody, right? It's almost always this kind of this thing we do in isolation. And the other thing I just wanted to mention in terms of why is it harmful is also is essentially brain training, right? Think of it as your brain is built to continually get better at what you do more of, right? Everything you do repeatedly is optimized for, essentially. And this is where porn leads to all kinds of problems with real life romantic and sexual interactions. Because what you're doing is you're training your brain to get aroused and get off in this specific context, which is most commonly it's you alone in looking at a small screen on which you're watching other people do probably fairly extreme sexual stuff, and you're stimulating yourself. And this is what's causing. So one of the more shocking numbers I've come across in my research is that an estimated 38% of men under 40 have some form of erectile dysfunction. Ranging from mild, just like some, difficulties, to severe. They basically almost never can get hard when trying to have sex with a woman. So, and that is way too much. That is way too much, especially for this age group, right? It's like under 40, you should have very, very sexually responsive genitals, right? Especially when there's an actual person in front of you, there's the actual mating opportunity is there, right? And why is that? So why is that happening? The only plausible explanation for this, for me, is this brain training effect. Is that you have young men who, by the time they are with a partner in a real life sexual interaction for the first time, they've already spent hundreds or maybe thousands of hours training their brain to get aroused in a completely different context, right? Mm-hmm. And so suddenly you're not alone. There's another person there. It's not, swipe to get whatever you want. It's not, you can't just like swipe this person away to get a different person, right? You're interact, like your senses are involved that are usually not involved. It's not, again, and you're not watching other people do it. It's there yourself. And you're just like, the confusion you feel was like, why isn't this working, right? It's like, actually, of course it's not working. You've literally spent hundreds or thousands of hours training in a completely different context. Your whole nervous system is like, what is going on? Why is there another person here? I'm supposed to get aroused here. This is not what we've been training for, right? And obviously that is a recipe for misery.
Wow. Yes. And yeah, you get it easily with a click versus all of a sudden talking about polarity, all the things that you do even before you end up in bed together, to create that arousal, even in the kitchen or in the day to day, just with one another, that playfulness, it's all not part of the porn experience, right?
Exactly. With porn, you always go straight to your favorite thing, right? And the whole, I mean, it used to be even that, like, you can also see how porn evolved to essentially become a more dangerous drug over time, because back when I discovered porn, it was like VHS tapes, where still, you would still have scenes. You would have scenes with a couple that last like half an hour or something. So you're just watching the same two people have sex, and there's maybe some build up or something, right? Whereas now you just go, whatever your favorite niche thing is, and you go straight to the action, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, how disconnecting is that from how sex actually works? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's like, and I think this is also something that people underestimate. I think it is so different, right? So the sexual experience you have from watching porn is like so different from actual sex. They almost have nothing in common with each other, right? It's like, and this is also very unclear, especially to young men who all of their experience of and knowledge of sex comes from porn. So they really have no idea what real sex is actually like. And how could they, right? How could they? And again, once you get to the point where you're actually wanting to have sex with a person, actually wanting to have a romantic relationship, this spells disaster.
Now, give me a positive outlook or like a healthy attitude towards porn, because on the other hand, now talking about the female side a little bit as well, but let's say in the feminine corner or in the world of women, reclaiming porn or finding access to porn, even being able to talk about it, being able to make it something also for the feminine, has been a development of recent years, right? Where we are celebrating that, oh wow, like we are realizing women like different sorts of porn, and they also get to have that experience that, they are just on their own venture and listen or watch those stories, go into that fantasy world, right? Like for women, it's a whole different story of like reclaiming it and trying to build a healthy connection by actually having more porn there in their hands, so to say. So how can we come towards a healthy relationship, or not just tabooing porn, but really finding a good way of making it part of my life?
Yeah. So I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial here, but I think that one of the reasons I mainly address men with porn is that, well, first of all, I'm a man, so I know that side of it better, right? But also, I do think that the effect that porn has on the human being is very, very different between men and women. So, and in part, this has to do with the nature of the masculine versus the nature of the feminine. So the masculine is outwards going. It's action, right? What's supposed to happen is that you are the agent. You take action. You make things happen. That is essentially the masculine, right? It's the concern with the outside world. And whereas the feminine is inward, and the feminine experience of sex, and this is always caveated with, of course, you can have, as a woman, you can play with the masculine, as a man, you can play with the feminine, and so on, right? Yeah. But in the essence of it, the feminine experience of sexual interaction has a lot to do with surrendering and opening up and trusting. And the thing is happening to you and you're allowing it, right? You're surrendering to the experience. And so consuming porn is less harmful to the feminine because you're consuming the thing, you're letting it affect you, you're becoming aroused by the thing that you're taking in, right? Which is more aligned, which is a bit more aligned with the female sexual experience, and which is why I think that there's also fewer negative consequences of, oh, I started watching porn, now I can't enjoy sex anymore, right? That tends to happen for women only at much more excessive levels of use. Whereas for men, it is immediately disconnecting of the masculine experience of sex because you are consuming it passively. It's disconnecting you from what it means to experience sex in the masculine way, right? This might also be part of the explanation why one of the consequences of porn use is that it leads to this kind of sexual orientation confusion, where it's very common that straight men start watching pornography featuring trans people and then eventually gay porn in a way that doesn't seem to be compatible with their actual sexual orientation. This might be one of the reasons, right? Where it's just, you're experiencing sex in this kind of passive way, and you're becoming more and more in tune with essentially the feminine experience of it. Which again, it's like there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, if it's done deliberately, right? But it's usually not a desired consequence. So I think that
the polarity point of view, you are no longer the creator or the builder, the leader of the sexual space. You are no longer the penetrator in that sense. You become the receptive part of click, watching, receive. Okay,
exactly,
right? Yeah,
exactly. So I think and that's one of the reasons why it's a bigger problem for men than for women, but also because men are more visually stimulated. They're more likely. So men are more responsive to visual stimuli than women. So they're more likely to get addicted to this thing, or women are more likely to get addicted to romance novels, right? Yes. Because romance novels are more in tune with the thing that you respond to as a woman, primally, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say that for a man, especially in the environment we live in now, for a man, the ideal amount of porn in your life is 0. It's just, and I say that, I also think that the ideal amount of alcohol in your life is 0, which isn't to say that it's impossible to use alcohol in a responsible way, but it's just, let's be real. Every glass of an alcoholic beverage you drink is neurotoxic. It is doing damage, and it is putting you at risk of, having another one and then doing something stupid and whatever, right? So that's what I mean by it's not like a purity test, but I'm just saying if we're talking about optimal, the optimal amount is 0. For women, it might be a little bit different, but even there, I would also say I understand the kind of, the reclaiming and the de-shaming of it. But it seems to me that it would be a balancing act in the best of cases, right? It's at what point is this, again, because it tends to have the same effects. It tends to do the same desensitization, just women are just like a bit less prone to falling down that rabbit hole, I think.
I mean, there's an instant idea coming, but I mean, it's not about shaming the ideas. It's not about shaming the stories. It's not about that, but how can you make it something to interact with in that sense, right? And I mean, if I can have my creative stories, or even, you know, with my partner share like the porn fantasies, it can be in role play, but it can also be just, you know, talking about it. It's, let's say, coming from a feminine mind, like I can easily close my eyes and visualize all that, and I don't need it to be recorded. I don't need all of those things. Like I could find a partner to create all this and still have the porn experience in a way that is very authentic, in a way that is in interaction with someone. That would be like my idea of a feminine version of that.
And you know, I do think it's very important also for everyone. It's important to remove the shame and the stigma from sexual desire, including, you know, whatever creative, kinky sexual desire, because shame is one of the negative emotions that we try to avoid by distracting ourselves with things like porn, right? This is one of the things, is like, let's be clear about this. Every addiction is ultimately a coping mechanism. But the thing that ends up making you reach for the addictive thing over and over again is things like stress and shame and negative feelings and things you don't want to confront. So to give you an example, right, in my case, a big part of the reason I was addicted to porn for so long was that, first of all, I felt immense shame about my own sexual energy. Even like I really felt like my sexuality, my sexual desires are like a bad thing.
Yeah.
And somehow, and I kind of culturally inherited this, maybe a bit of like, you know, my family is, I wasn't raised religious, but like there's still like Catholic echoes in my family. Just a lot of feelings of shame around this, that somehow this is a bad thing. Somehow, if anything, I need to protect the world from this terrible thing that is rising up inside me, right? That's something I had to deal with. And also I felt extremely like undesirable. I was always the guy, you know, I'd always have a crush on some girl and she wouldn't even know I exist in most cases. And I felt like, you know, I'm totally undesirable. Nobody could ever want to be with me. Nobody could ever want to have sex with me or be partners with me. And so these are all feelings that obviously I don't want to sit there feeling like that. Right? I don't want to sit there feeling like, oh, I'm so undesirable, I'll always be alone. So what do I do when these feelings come up? It's like I go to porn, because porn distracts me, it soothes that pain, and it gives me the illusion of acceptance. This is one of the things that ultimately was very, very a big part of the temptation of porn for me was like, that's the place where I'm fully accepted, right? All the girls in porn are basically welcoming me and welcoming my desire. And I'm not hurting anyone. So again, because I had the belief that somehow if I express attraction and desire towards a woman in real life, I'm somehow harming her. Then it's like, thank God there's porn where I'm not actually hurting anyone, right? So, and as you can see, this is what I mean when it's like, most of the time when I was watching porn, it wasn't because I was feeling horny or I wanted to feel pleasure. It's because I didn't want to feel all those sad emotions, and I felt like I have to manage this stuff I'm ashamed of, right? Yeah. And so that's ultimately what you have to address. And I think this is very common, especially shame. And so shaming people more or generating, we usually self-generated, right? So if you self-generate shame about your use of porn, it's only going to make you use porn even more. It's very counterproductive. So I'm 100% in agreement with the destigmatizing of it. Yeah. But definitely the perspective I come from is, again, like, I do think it's too dangerous for me to say there's any recommended dose of it.
Yeah, yeah. What is from your experience when you work with men on that topic? What is like the typical actual root causes? You gave a few glimpses here in your story, but what is your experience of getting out of an addiction? And what is usually like the beliefs or the fears or the feelings that come up in that journey for men?
So shame is a very common one. Various forms of shame around your own sexual desires. And also a very common one is essentially some form of pain of past rejections, whether perceived or real, pain of past breakups. So just very, very painful situations. Anything from, like a breakup that was really hard, like being dumped by the girl you were madly in love with, to, being cheated on, being betrayed in some way. Just a lot of emotional pain connected with what's ultimately making you want to avoid even trying to get laid or find a partner in real life, because you go, oh, no, last time I tried this was so painful, let's never do that again, right?
I was
And it's
denied.
especially bad when it happens multiple times, right? So when you had the girlfriend, you got cheated on, you had another girlfriend, you got cheated on again, it's like, now you're starting to believe that that's always what's going to happen. And it's almost like the moment you meet someone, the moment you're on a date with someone, part of you goes, I know where this leads. Right? We're like 2 months away from that pain of being cheated on. Let's not do that, right? And so what do you do to avoid all that pain is you distract yourself with various addictions. One of them might be porn, right?
Yeah.
So some form of like this kind of pain, which again can be from past experiences, or it can just be the pain of feeling completely unlovable, essentially.
Yeah.
And then there's also a lot of completely unrelated, so stuff that is unrelated to sex and romance and dating. So it's just like feelings of hopelessness, feelings of like directionless, feeling like is lost. There's a lot of like doomerism nowadays, right? Where people feel like everything's only getting worse. There's no point, climate change is going to kill us, or the next COVID is going to kill us, or something's going to kill us very soon. And it's all pointless and whatever. Just lots of stories about why everything is hopeless. So why even try, which again, doesn't feel good. So you try to distract yourself, which leads to addiction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, as you are sharing these things, I'm at that point of like, and you have probably no one to talk about these things ever about, right? Like, so yes. I made these experiences that 5 times in a row, this girl that I wanted to talk to, or many girls I wanted to talk to, they all said no. In a world where everybody is hustling and always successful, and we only hear and see success stories, and we don't have people that we can talk to about, how to master a no and how to keep going, or how to not take things personal. Imagine a world where emotional mastery, relational support, and inner work come before heartbreak, resentment, divorce, reactivity. And you know what increases the odds of your 10x kind of love? Taking people along, sharing this with the people that have the biggest influence on you. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to my channel and share it with 1 or the 5 people that have the biggest influence on you and that deserve the 10x kind of love. Let's raise the bar stronger together. When you fail, it's not personal. In a world where we lack all these things, again, you are left on your own with nobody to talk to, no role model, no sparring, no inspiration, and learning relationship skills, learning how to make things talkable, or create settings where you can talk about things, where you can relate with others. Feels like, it's one of those skills that can ultimately make all these things as well tangible, or something to embrace, which brings me to maybe the last category to explore. But so we are talking about the couples setting. How can a couple that experiences porn addiction as a topic, how does it affect them? I think we have touched upon quite a few things, how it negatively affects a couple, but how can we, as a couple, or is it an individual journey, get out of that cycle? I think for many couples, she doesn't even know it's happening, or let's assume that's the setting, right? Yeah. How can we even create a setting where this is something where we can talk about?
Yeah, so it definitely, with couples, it can be a vicious cycle where typically the man in the couple will escape to pornography in response to difficulties in the relationship. So it could be, some conflict in the relationship. It creates this emotional pain, and it creates the disconnect in the relationship, which means that you're in emotional pain, plus you're not getting your sexual needs met right now. Solution, porn, right? And then the more you watch porn, the more disconnected you become, the bigger the problems tend to become, the more you're being driven into porn consumption and porn use again, right? And so, okay, understandably, one of the problems is that men and women perceive porn very differently.
Yeah.
And so what will often happen, I think something that many guys experience is that, maybe your girlfriend somehow, I don't know, catches you in the act or goes through your browser history or whatever, somehow finds out that you've been watching porn, and she freaks out. And she freaks out as if you'd been cheating on her, basically, right? And so it becomes it's a huge drama right away. You're a bad person for doing this. How dare you? You've, and some ultimatum, like if you ever do this again, it's over, this kind of thing, right? Which will put the guy on the defensive, because he's like, hold on, I'm not cheating on you. What are you talking about, right? It's not the same. I'm literally not having sex with other people. But it immediately makes it such a sore spot, and you're not experiencing, like, as the porn user, you're not experiencing compassion or empathy or anything. It's just shame, shame, shame. Don't ever do this again. You've hurt me so much. I can't believe that you did this to me. You have to promise me never to do this. And you go, okay, sure, I guess I'll promise. But you're an addict. So what almost never happens is that an addict goes, okay, I'm going to stop. And then they stop forever. That's basically not how recovery goes, right? If only. So now you're in the situation where you're going to do it in secret, and you have to lie to her about it. And you feel even worse about it. And guess what? All of this shame and stress and fear makes you use even more, right? And essentially, the problem is that your partner has become your enemy. Your partner is essentially on the side of the addiction, right? Your partner is stoking the flames of the addiction unknowingly by just adding fear and emotional pain to the whole situation. And obviously you feel bad about it, but you can't talk to, like, she's already demonstrated to you, you cannot talk to her about this, right? So I think that's one thing you have to realize. Like, if this is happening, you have to realize that this really is not like cheating. For a man, watching porn is not like cheating on you. Mm-hmm. And it is equivalent to a woman reading romance novels, right? Mm-hmm. You're not cheating on your boyfriend when you read a romance novel. If you can agree with that, then you have to agree that because we have different brains, the equivalent of that is your partner watching porn is not cheating on you. It's not to say that it's a good thing that he's watching porn, but coming from that frame of, this is a disastrous mistake and it's a disastrous insult from you to me that you must stop, is just not helping, right? So I just kind of want to point out, this attitude puts you on the side of the addiction, right?
Yeah.
What's unfortunately rare, but what will be very helpful is if you can become your partner's ally in this. And if you can basically, one of the best things, like, if you are on the other side of this, if you're the non-porn user in a partnership with a porn user, one of the best things you can do is, like, really engage with this and really try to fully understand what is going on for your partner. What makes them use porn? What is, what do they get out of it? Why do they do? How do they feel about it? Do they want to be using porn? Do they want to be using porn as much as they are using porn? And opening up, and basically, if you can both come to an agreement, you also have to understand, like, it's very strongly my belief that you cannot make your partner want something, right? If they don't want to quit porn, you can't make them. All you can do, again, you can stoke the fires of emotional pain, and then they're going to do it in secret, and it's going to be a big drama and whatever, right? But it's not going to help. So if you can really open the channels of communication and make it clear that You're interested in understanding what is going on for them.
Yeah.
And if both of you can come to the agreement, yes, it's like you want to quit and I want to help you quit. How can I do that?
Yeah.
That gives you a massively better chance of having a good outcome.
And I think like the porn is so to say that the tip of the iceberg, right? We have here clarified like there's probably deeper stuff underlying that leads to that. So in a way, I feel it is an individual journey to get to the agreement. It is an addiction for me. I do want to change something, so I'm gonna go on that journey, and it's something like you have to show up individually for that healing journey, be it on your own, and you have all the coaching and healing tools, or get help on your side, right? Find that space where you can talk about it. Find that space where you can, deal with what's coming up in a relationship. And this could be about porn and any other subject that, is triggering each other. There's always this idea, especially in modern couples coaching, can we create a safe setting to talk about these things and take out the drama? Because if it's triggering her or if it's triggering the other partner, then, it's probably also underlying beliefs that are there. Because first and foremost, you are in a space where you want to meet each other. And if you are not able to honestly talk about things and deal with the triggers on your own, or support each other dealing with the triggers without finger pointing, then the spiral is going down, because the other person is going to learn, I cannot share this with you, and it's just closed doors, right? So, and that's very much for many topics. How can we create a safe setting, drama-free space?
Yeah. And I think also, I have to say, like, I think for all addictions, but maybe especially things like porn addiction and social media addiction, actually relations, so relating to other people, socially connecting with other people in different ways, are a big part of the solution. There can be so much healing in that, because if we think of the two factors in porn addiction, is one is this whole like stress management, emotional self-regulation component, and the other one is sex, right? Sexual desire, sexual pleasure. And for a lot of men, there's going to be a lot of both going on, which is that I have these sources of stress in my life. I have shame, guilt, pain, whatever. And I don't know how to deal with that. And I'm not getting my sexual needs met. Okay. And for both of those things, in partnership is where you can heal a lot of that. Because if with your partner, you can come to that understanding, okay, it's like there are different reasons that make you reach for porn. And just being able to talk about it, like being able to talk about the things you're afraid of, the things you're ashamed of, and so on, will unwind a lot of that emotional pain. And right away, like when you unwind that pain, you notice that you just don't have the desire to watch porn as much anymore, right? Mm-hmm. But then the other component is that, and this is also in relation, I think what's extremely valuable and very rare, unfortunately, for men to experience, is that their sexual desire is just fully welcomed. Yeah. So to something that I've also unfortunately experienced in past relationships is that my sexual desire was sometimes welcome and sometimes seen as a threat, and it was kind of context dependent, right? And I could never read the context. So it didn't feel safe for me to express sexual desire, because I didn't know whether the response I would get is, essentially an enthusiastic, welcoming response, or you only want me for sex kind of response, or something else, right? And because I could never read, what I would do is I would just suppress my own sexual, or my expression of sexual desire over time. Now she's unhappy because I'm not expressing sexual desire anymore, which causes more stress, which makes me want more porn, and so on, right? And I think what's really, really important to establish is that and I think this goes both ways as well. So you just go, listen, your sexual desires and fantasies and whatever are welcome here. Even if you tell me something that I don't want to do, it is welcome, right? So to give an example that would be very triggering for many men is like, if she tells me she fantasizes about having sex with multiple men, right? That for most men, or I think for well above half of men would be like, no, I don't want that, right? Yeah. And that's fine. But the thing is, you can still welcome that. You have that fantasy, and it's welcome. Like I accept that you have that fantasy, and I'm not going to shame you for it. I'm not going to make a drama about it. I'm not going to accuse you of cheating because you told me you fantasize about having sex with multiple men, right? I can welcome it and say, we're not going to do that. Okay. And it's the same the other way around. Like if you can do that for your man and say, listen, any desire you have, no matter how weird you think it is, no matter whatever, it's always going to be welcome, right? If you want to do stuff that I don't understand and that I don't want to do, my first response is going to be that this is welcome. I accept this about you and thank you for telling me about it. And then the second response is, since I don't want to actually do that, let's figure out what we can do, right?
Yes.
And again, this is unfortunately really rare, but if you can do both of those things, I would say that, again, it's the short form version, but if you can do both of those things for your partner, if you can help your partner work through whatever their stressors and emotional issues are and be someone they can come to connect with and communicate about that. And you can give them a sense of safety where your sexual desires and fantasies are always welcome, even if I don't want to do them. Those two things are an enormous help for someone who is trying to overcome an addiction.
Wonderful. I agree. Thank you. Thank you for those closing words. So in a way, I feel like, hey, like this is happening in my coaching spaces of like creating a safe space where we can learn how to welcome everything on the table. But then for people watching here that feel I want to deal with the addiction, I want to explore that part, how can they get in contact with you?
So you can find this brand where I'm talking about this problem is called Quit by Healing. And that's just all one word, Quit by Healing. And you can find me on YouTube. You can also find me on TikTok and various other places, but YouTube is is probably the easiest way to find the Quit by Healing channel. And from there, you can also go to quitbyhealing.com. Again, it's all one word, quitbyhealing.com. And I also have a Discord community. You can join that community. And this is basically where you can find all of my stuff, right? So you can basically learn what my approach is to overcoming porn addiction. And you can also get in touch with me through the Discord community. So that would be the place to go. Yeah.
Perfect. And there's videos already, like free content to watch, but then also the possibility really to join or work with you and go deeper in that journey. Yeah. Thank you, Shane. Thank you so much. It was a beautiful conversation. I think for everybody watching who heard us speak, please like take notes as always of the 3 aha moments for you or things you would like to explore, and let them simmer a little bit in your mind. And I look forward to see you in the next interview in the Modern Couples Summit. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marcella. I really appreciate that you're helping me bring this message to more people, because like we said in the beginning, unfortunately, it's something we usually don't talk about. So thank you very much for being one of the people who is talking about it.
Yes. It's all about relating. Thank you. Short interruption, because this message really needs to go out there. The quality of your relationships impacts the quality of your life. It is, in fact, the key factor. And here we are, fearing and shying away from commitment, shying away from the emotional work, when really this is what distinguishes us from the machines, embracing emotions and learning how to embrace differences. So Modern Couples, what started out as the small coaching business, has turned into a university, or I like to call it a universe. It is the place where ambitious leaders can upgrade their relationship skills up front. It is the place where couples turn to when they wonder, should I stay, should I go? Where we explore, if necessary, the graceful path of uncoupling. And it is also the place where we newly introduce bespoke matchmaking for ambitious individuals. If you are interested in any of that, because really every phase of life is an opportunity to grow your relationship skills, check out modern-couples.com. Once a month, there is a free masterclass where you can meet me, where we can connect, as well as if you like more the one-on-one approach, there is a limited amount of free discovery calls. See that you can get hold of one of them, and I hope we get to connect. I look forward to elevating your relationship.